Hello, welcome to Robyn on the Farm. Today I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful loaf of bread using the dough cycle on your bread machine. We're also going to compare this loaf to a loaf made totally in the bread machine so that you can compare the two side by side. Let's get started. Today I'm going to show you how to make a loaf of bread using your bread machine, but only using the dough cycle. Now what that means is we're going to put all of our ingredients in the bread pan. The bread machine is going to mix it up and it's going to let it rise, and then that will be the end of the dough cycle, and then we'll get it out. We will punch it down, shape it into a loaf, put it into our own bread pan, let it rise again, and then stick it in the oven. It might sound like a complicated process, but it's super simple. The nice thing about doing it this way is that you get to control the shape of your loaf. If you like the shape of your loaf better in a bread pan rather than in the bread machine bread pan, then that's a great option. Also, your crust will end up a little finer, not so thick and crunchy when you bake it in the oven. So a lot of people like to do it this way because of that. It's just another great way to use your bread machine to make it work for you. It can do so many things. Let it make your life easier. Let it help you to save time. Let it help you to eat healthier. Let it help you to feed your family better. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to make bread using only the dough cycle in our bread machine, and then we're going to bake it in the oven. I'm just going to start with my basic bread machine recipe. I've shown y'all this before. This is my favorite recipe. So I'm just going to throw everything in the bread pan, and then we're going to let the bread machine mix it, knead it, and then let it rise. Okay, so that's what we're doing today. So I'm going to start with 1 cup of hot water. There we go, just put it on into your bread pan. 1 cup of hot water, 1/3 cup of milk. I like using full fat milk, but use whatever you have. Okay, now you'll need a 1/4 cup of melted butter or oil. This is oil. This is a light olive oil. Use whatever you have, whatever you want. That's the beauty. You get to control exactly what you put into your bread. Now, on top of that, I'm going to put 3 3/4 cups of flour. This is my bread flour. You can use all-purpose flour. 1, 2, 3, and I don't get caught up with exact measurements because this bread is going to turn out no matter what you do. You don't have to level it, you don't have to do anything. I'm sure I put a little bit different amounts in every time, and it seems to turn out the exact same every time. So that's the beauty with this bread. Okay, after that we're going to need 3 tablespoons of sugar. You could also, if you don't want to use sugar, you could use 3 tablespoons of honey. Okay, just going to throw that in there. 1, 2, 3. Okay, now 1½ teaspoons of salt. Just kind of put that in there. It's the greatest thing. You just get to throw everything into your bread machine. I love it. Okay, last ingredient is yeast. Okay, so I'm going to make a little well. Hopefully you can see this. I'm going to just make a little well with my finger in the ingredients. This will keep the yeast from touching the salt and interacting, but I don't think it really matters that much. But that's how I learned how to do it years ago, and I'm just going to continue to do it because my bread turns out great. So I'm going to do it the same every time. Okay, 1½ teaspoons of yeast. This is my active dry yeast. I buy it in bulk from like Costco and Sam's Club, keep it in my freezer. This is really funny because this actually expired 2 years ago, but I've had it in my freezer. It still works totally great. Okay, so keep your yeast in your freezer and it'll keep working. Okay, those are all of my ingredients. Now, I'll show you this part. My bread machine has a dough function. So on your bread machine, look and see, it will have a dough function. You might have a button or you might have to like select down to it. So I'm just going to put this into my bread machine. Okay, got that. Now I'm going to select, I have to press all these buttons all the way down to dough, and it says 1.5 hours. So the dough cycle is going to take 1.5 hours. So go to your dough cycle, press start, and it's just going to start mixing, and then it's going to knead, and then it's going to let it rise. So it's going to take out those 3 steps of traditional bread making. And really, this is just easier. Sometimes the hardest part of bread making is kneading and knowing how long to knead it. So it's great. Your bread machine will do it. Take all the guesswork out of it for you. I'm gonna let this go. In an hour and a half, I'll show you what my dough looks like, and I'll show you the next steps. It's pretty fun. I love it. Here it is. You can see it is on the dough cycle right here. Dough cycle, and it's gonna take about an hour and a half. Let's see what it's doing in here. Yep, it's just gonna knead around for a little bit. After a few minutes, I like to come in with a spatula and make sure all of everything's off the sides. Get all of everything incorporated and let it knead it together. Okay, so the dough cycle is done. Let's check it out. There it is. Look at that. It's all risen and beautiful. That is exactly what it should look like at the end of the dough cycle. Here's our dough. The dough cycle ended, and here's our dough all risen. This is exactly what you want it to look like. It's looking great so far. Let's see, I'm gonna lightly flour my surface. Just a little bit of flour on there, just so it doesn't stick. Okay, now I'm gonna turn out my dough. Let's get this out of here. Just kind of use your fingers, get it out, and you gotta look out for this part. You don't want that to be in your dough. Okay, so there it is. It came out of our bread pan pretty well. Make sure you get the little paddle off so that you don't bake this into your bread. That would be funny. Okay, so here it is. Oh, turned out great. I really didn't need to flour my surface much at all. Okay, so now I'm just gonna pat it out like this. The next step is to shape it into a loaf and put it into your bread pan. So just kind of pat it out, kind of squish out any air bubbles or anything like that. Okay, now I'm just gonna roll it up. Roll it up really good, kind of press it together, press those seams together, and then flip them to the bottom. And also, I'll do it this way so you can see, kind of get those sides tucked in. And this will just give you a really pretty loaf. Okay, so there it is. Just kind of squish it together, pat it out. You can be rough with it. Okay, now I have my bread pan right here. My cast iron bread pans that I love. I've been using them daily. I just love them so much. I oiled them up really good. So if you use cast iron bread pans, make sure you oil them really well. Just throw them in your bread pan. There it is. Now, the next step is to just let it rise. And this will take, I usually say about 45 minutes, give or take, just depending on how warm or cool your house is. So I'm just gonna let it sit on the counter just like this. You can cover it with a warm tea towel if you want to, but I'm just gonna let mine sit just like this on the counter. And in about 45 minutes, it should be risen nicely, and I'll show you at that point. It's been about 45 minutes. I wanted to show you this dough. Look how great that looks. That is what you want it to look like. It's just a little higher than the sides, and it's ready to go in the oven. Please excuse the bread machine going in the background. I decided after I got this dough out from the dough cycle that I'd put another batch in and let the bread machine completely make the bread so that we can compare this bread to the bread that is made in the bread machine. So that'll be a fun little experiment to just compare the two side by side. Anyway, this has been rising about 45 minutes and it is beautiful. And it's ready to go into the oven. So I preheated my oven to 350 degrees and I'm gonna let this bake for 30 minutes. Wow, look at that loaf of bread. Look how tall it is. That looks amazing. It rose really well. It has a really beautiful color. It smells amazing. I wish you could smell it. So this is the kind of loaf that you get when you use your dough cycle on your bread machine and then bake it in the oven. Doesn't it look good? You should try it if you've never tried this. Okay, I'm gonna turn it out onto this towel. See if it comes out easily. Yes, it did. See, I love my cast iron bread pans. They're amazing. I've been using them every single day. I love them so much. We go through a lot of bread in this family. We have a family of 6, and so I make bread and we eat it. I make bread and we eat it. That's how it goes. The thing I like about this is that it looks like bread that you made totally by hand, start to finish. Because, you know, the bread in the bread machine looks different. It looks like bread machine bread, and this looks like totally homemade bread. And it is homemade bread. All of it's homemade bread, but this definitely has a more traditional look to it. Okay, I'm gonna let this loaf of bread cool. while the bread machine bakes our second loaf. I did that on the 3-hour light crust cycle. I'm gonna let it totally bake in the bread machine, and then we're gonna compare this loaf to that loaf, and just you can kind of see the differences. I've never actually done that before. I've never compared the two side by side, so that'll be fun. All right, the 3 hours is up. This bread is finally done in the bread machine. Let's see if I can get it out of this loaf pan. Here we go. Okay, so let's compare these two. Let's see. Wow, one's a lot taller. Let's see, this one's a lot taller than this one, but this one seemed so huge when it came out of the oven to me. Okay, this one's a lot taller. Let's see, they're really about the same width. So that's funny that this one's so much bigger to me. I'm really, really shocked actually to compare these two side by side. I didn't know they were gonna look so different. Okay, so these are the exact same recipe, same measurements, same everything, the exact same. The only difference is we use the dough cycle for this one. This one, we let the bread machine do all of it from start to finish. So this one took 3 hours start to finish. Yeah, I'm really, really surprised. Obviously, I've done it this way using the dough cycle a ton of times, and I've done it this way a ton of times. And I really did not ever realize that the bread looked so different coming out because I had never compared the two side by side ever. So this is a really great experiment. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and cut into this one that we did our dough cycle first. Okay. One thing to notice, when you do it using the dough cycle and put it in your own pan, you don't get that thing at the bottom. You know that thing, the bread machine thing, right there. You don't get that hole from the paddles. So that's kind of nice. Okay, well this one looks great. Really great crumb, really nice crust. Everything looks really good about it. Let me cut this one. Let's see this one. This one hasn't had a chance to cool off, but we're gonna cut it anyway. Yeah, this one feels a lot lighter and airier and fluffier. I am so surprised. I can feel that the crust is thicker and crustier on this bread though. Yeah, this one's a lot smaller. Not as crunchy, not as well done. Okay, look at the size difference. Isn't that incredible? Look at that. Like I said, same exact recipe, same exact measurements, just dough cycle and totally in the bread machine. Okay, well, I'm gonna take a little bite of each one. Let's see. It tastes great. Okay, there's that. And let me try this one. That tastes great too. The crust is crunchier. No, that's really it. This one's actually not quite as dense. I'm really surprised. I really thought all these years that this was more dense than this. So, I do like the looks of this loaf a little bit better. I like that it looks more homemade. I like the look of the bread pan loaf, and this is more of the traditional bread machine loaf. But gosh, I just think they both look great. And really, they're just different. They're just totally different. And I'm really surprised. Well, these are the results of our experiment. I'm glad that I did this because I really had no idea that they turned out so differently. I hope that you've enjoyed learning how to use the dough cycle, and hopefully you've enjoyed seeing the differences between the dough cycle and totally in the bread machine. This has been kind of a fun experiment. Anyway, thanks for being here with me on Robyn on the Farm, and I will see you next time.